There are moments in life when everything collapses at once. The betrayal you never expected, the door that slammed without warning, the dream that seemed to die in your hands. But what if the very things that broke you were the same things God was using to build you? What if every tear, every delay, every injustice was not proof that God abandoned you, but evidence that He is preparing you for something far greater than you can see? In today's story, we enter the life of a young man whose destiny began the moment everything was taken from him. Before the palace came the pit, before honor came humiliation, and before the dream came the breaking. If you've ever felt forgotten, overlooked, or stuck in a season that makes no sense, this message is for you, because Joseph's journey may be the key to understanding your own. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to Kingdom Stories and hit the like button so YouTube knows this message matters. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Now, take a breath, because what you're about to hear may change how you see your entire life story. He was betrayed by his own blood, sold into slavery, unjustly accused, and forgotten in a cold prison cell. Yet, even in the moments when Joseph felt most abandoned, when the tears fell quietly, when doors closed without explanation, when long nights stretched into silence, God was shaping a purpose far greater than he could imagine. Joseph's story is not simply about a man who rose above suffering. It is about a God who takes the painful pieces of our journey and transforms them into a destiny that could never have been reached without them. And maybe, like Joseph, you've wondered why God allowed certain losses in your life, why people you trusted turned away, why a dream that once felt so alive now feels delayed, distant, or even impossible. But what if the delay isn't denial? What if the silence isn't absence? What if instead God is positioning you for something that still lies ahead? And in the same way, you may feel stuck, unseen, or paused. But heaven is not standing still. God is aligning things in the background, preparing you for the very place He designed long before you were born. And when we look at Joseph's journey, we find three stages every person with a calling eventually walks through: the pit, the prison, and the palace. Each stage carries a lesson powerful enough to reshape how you see your own story. It all began with a dream. A young man, only 17, filled with innocence and wonder, saw visions that would one day change the world. In his dream, the sheaves bowed before him, and the sun, moon, and stars bent low in acknowledgement. It was a glimpse of destiny, but also the spark that awakened envy in those closest to him. Joseph's brothers couldn't stand the sight of the calling he carried. His dream felt like a mirror revealing everything they were not ready to confront within themselves. And that truth still holds today. Those who have not discovered God's purpose for their own lives will often try to dim the light of those who have. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers. But before Joseph could even greet them, they saw him from afar and whispered among themselves, "Here comes the dreamer." Their hatred had grown so deep that they plotted to kill him just to see what would become of his dreams. But God was already writing another path. Reuben, the eldest brother, intervened and convinced them not to shed Joseph's blood. Instead, they threw him into a dry well in the middle of the desert, a cold, dark, lonely pit. There, with no one to hear his cries, Joseph learned his first lesson. God's purpose often begins the moment we lose control. As long as Joseph remained the favored son, protected and comfortable, he was not yet ready for the future God had prepared. The pit was the place where pride fell away, where dependence shifted from people to God, where Joseph learned to stand even when no one else stood with him. And maybe you too are standing in such a place, a season where nothing makes sense, where you feel misunderstood or forgotten, where dreams seem buried instead of blooming. But the pit is not the end. It is the doorway to transformation. In the pit, Joseph discovered that God's presence does not depend on circumstances. Even when the ground beneath him disappeared, God remained. Sometimes God uses rejection not to punish us, but to redirect us. He removes certain people because they cannot walk with us into the future he is crafting. If Joseph had stayed in the comfort of his father's home, he never would have reached the palace. God's purpose often begins where our comfort ends. Before the impossible becomes reality, we walk through the improbable, those confusing, painful places where faith is tested and character is shaped. Joseph's brothers sold him for 20 pieces of silver, believing they were getting rid of him forever. But all the while they were unknowingly sending Joseph straight into the path of his destiny. And the same is true for us. Betrayal may feel like the breaking point, but God can use it as the very push that moves us into his promise. Joseph arrived in Egypt as a slave, yet within him God was already forming a governor. Those who harmed him never realized they were participating in God's greater design. The pit became the soil where purpose took root. Every tear that fell there watered the beginnings of Joseph's destiny. When Joseph was taken to Egypt, he was sold into the house of Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Even as a servant in a foreign land, Joseph carried something that could not be taken from him: the presence of God. Everything Joseph touched prospered. Potiphar's household flourished because Joseph lived there. When God's purpose is inside someone, it bears fruit even in barren places. But the enemy always seeks to interrupt progress right before its time. Potiphar's wife became captivated by Joseph. Day after day she tried to lure him into sin, but Joseph feared God more than he desired approval or pleasure. When he refused her advances, she lied and accused him of a crime he did not commit. Joseph did not defend himself. He was thrown into prison, punished for righteousness. And this is where purpose is tested most deeply, when doing the right thing still leads to painful consequences. Prison was not punishment for Joseph. It was refinement. God removed him from Potiphar's house because the calling on Joseph's life was greater than the role of a servant. But before Joseph could wear a crown, God needed to mold the heart that would carry it. In prison, Joseph faced the silence of God, the kind of silence that stirs questions, that aches in the soul, that makes a person whisper, "Lord, where are you?" Yet Joseph stayed faithful. He served, he worked, he encouraged others. Even while waiting for his own freedom, he brought comfort to those around him. There he met Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, troubled by strange dreams. Joseph listened and gave them interpretations that came directly from God. Everything Joseph said happened exactly as revealed. When the cupbearer was restored to Pharaoh, Joseph asked, "Remember me." But the cupbearer forgot him. For 2 long years, Joseph sat in prison. 2 years of unanswered prayers, 2 years of being overlooked. Yet God had not forgotten. Joseph's waiting time was preparation time. While Joseph waited in a cell, God was preparing a throne. Human forgetfulness cannot delay divine purpose. There are moments in life when doing the right thing seems to cost you everything. Joseph knew that feeling well. He honored God, resisted temptation, and chose integrity. And yet the reward for his obedience was a prison cell. But Joseph's imprisonment was never punishment. It was refinement. God removed him from Potiphar's house because his plan for Joseph was far greater than the position of a household servant. Before God placed a crown on Joseph's head, he first shaped the heart that would carry it. And in that dark, silent prison, Joseph encountered a kind of silence only those chosen for great things ever truly know. The silence that pierces, that confuses, the silence that makes a person whisper, "Lord, are you still with me?" Yet even without answers, Joseph remained faithful. He continued to work. He continued to serve. He continued to help others. While he waited for his own freedom, he brought freedom to the hearts around him. In that place he met 2 of Pharaoh's officials, the cupbearer and the baker, each troubled by dreams they could not understand. Joseph listened, and with humility he said, "Interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams." God spoke through him, and everything happened exactly as Joseph said. The baker's fate was sealed, and the cupbearer was restored to honor. As the cupbearer prepared to leave the prison, Joseph asked only one thing: "Remember me when you stand before Pharaoh." But the cupbearer forgot him. 2 years passed, 2 years of silence, 2 years of unanswered prayers, 2 years of feeling overlooked by the very man he helped. This is the part of the journey few talk about. The season when time stands still, when your efforts seem invisible, when those you blessed forget your name. But heaven does not forget. Joseph's waiting season was not wasted. It was preparation. While Joseph waited behind bars, God was preparing the throne. When the purpose belongs to God, no human forgetfulness has the power to cancel it. In those silent years, God was teaching Joseph to trust what he could not see, to understand that human favor can vanish, but God's faithfulness never does. Prison became Joseph's classroom. There he learned patience. There he learned to serve without applause, to love God without reward, to be faithful without validation. Prison reveals who you really are when no one is watching. Prison shows who loves God for who he is, not just for what he gives. Joseph did not complain. He did not shut down. Instead, he turned prison into ministry. His character was so trustworthy that the jailer placed every prisoner under his care. Even behind bars, Joseph led. When a person walks in God's purpose, even the lowest places become territories of authority. God was training Joseph to rule, first in a place no one wanted, so that he would be ready when leadership truly mattered. How many times have you felt stuck in a season that refuses to move? Stuck in a prayer that hasn't been answered? Stuck in a dream that feels too far away? Prison seasons are God's invitation to maturity. They silence the noise around us so we can finally hear His voice clearly. It is in these quiet, hidden places that God teaches us to wait without losing heart, to serve without being seen, to trust without understanding. In prison, the dreamer became the man who would one day rule. There is a kind of maturity born only in silence, the maturity that comes when God empties us of human strength so He can fill us with divine purpose. And then, at the exact moment God appointed, everything changed with a single memory. Pharaoh had a dream no one could interpret, a dream that disturbed the peace of the entire palace. It was then the cupbearer suddenly remembered. "Today," he said, "I remember my shortcomings. There is a young Hebrew man in prison. He interpreted my dreams, and everything happened just as he said." In that instant, God caused the forgotten one to be remembered. What looked like silence had been strategy all along. Joseph was summoned immediately. He shaved, changed his clothes, and within a few hours went from prisoner to standing in the presence of the most powerful man in the world. God can rewrite a life in a single day, but He takes years to prepare the heart. So if you feel trapped in a waiting season, don't despise your prison. It is not the end of your calling. It is the workshop where God shapes you into the person who can hold the promise. The same God who allowed you to enter this season has already marked the day you will leave it. And when that day comes, nothing and no one will be able to stop it. Prison is where purpose is tested, and every true purpose must pass through the furnace of time. If you are waiting, do not give up. Heaven has not forgotten you. Your prayers have not disappeared. God's timing is still moving, quiet but unstoppable. Soon He will open the door no one can close, and when it opens you will see that every silent minute was preparation for the sound of His call. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh. The same young man who once trembled in a pit now stood confidently before the ruler of Egypt. Pharaoh shared his dream. 7 fat cows swallowed by 7 thin cows, 7 full heads of grain consumed by 7 scorched ones. No one in Egypt could interpret it, but Joseph, overflowing with the Spirit of God, said gently, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh the answer he seeks." And God did. Through Joseph, heaven revealed the message. 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. God also revealed the strategy: store food in the good years so the nation could survive the years of lack. Pharaoh was astonished. "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" he asked. Then he placed his royal ring on Joseph's hand, dressed him in fine linen, placed a gold chain around his neck, and made him second in command over all of Egypt. The slave became a ruler. The forgotten became unforgettable. The dreamer saw his vision unfold before his eyes. But the most beautiful part is this: the palace did not change Joseph's heart. The man who remained pure in the pit and faithful in prison now stood humble in the palace. He understood that purpose is never about position, it is about mission. It is not about rising above others, it is about being available for God's plan. 7 years of abundance came, just as God promised. Egypt prospered, and then famine swept across the land, reaching even Canaan. Jacob, old and weary, heard rumors that Egypt had grain. Without knowing God was orchestrating every detail, he sent his sons to buy food from the very brother they had betrayed. When they reached the governor's presence, they bowed low before Joseph, but did not recognize him. Time had carved strength into Joseph's face. His garments reflected authority. His posture radiated wisdom and pain and glory. And in that moment, as his brothers bowed, Joseph felt something inside him tremble. The dream of his youth was standing before him, alive in reality. The dream Joseph saw as a boy was unfolding before his eyes. The moment his brothers bowed, everything inside him froze. He recognized them instantly, the voices he grew up with, the familiar way they moved, the faces weathered by the desert sun. And though years had passed, Joseph knew exactly who stood before him. Yet a question rose quietly in his heart. Had they changed? Were they repentant? Or would they hurt Benjamin the same way they once hurt him? So Joseph hardened his expression and spoke sharply, not out of cruelty, but to test what was inside their hearts. "Where do you come from?" he demanded. They answered, "We come from Canaan to buy food." Joseph accused them of spying, not because they were spies, but because he needed to see who they had become. They insisted they were honest men, sons of one father, and mentioned their youngest brother, Benjamin. At the sound of Benjamin's name, Joseph felt his heart tremble. Benjamin, the only brother who had not betrayed him, the last living connection to his mother. Joseph forced back his tears and said, "If you are truthful, bring your youngest brother here. One of you will stay behind as a guarantee." Simeon was taken and imprisoned before their eyes, and the others returned home in anguish. When they told Jacob what had happened, it reopened wounds the old father had carried for years. "You have already taken Joseph from me," he cried. "Now you want Benjamin. He will not go." But the famine grew worse. Hunger pressed against their door. Judah rose and said, "Father, if we do not take Benjamin, we will die. I will be responsible for his life." With trembling hands and a grieving heart, Jacob finally agreed. "May the Almighty grant you mercy before that man," he whispered. And so the brothers returned to Egypt, this time bringing Benjamin with them. The moment Joseph saw Benjamin entering the hall, his strength nearly failed him. A wave of emotion, longing, love, shock, grief, rose so powerfully he had to turn away. He prepared a banquet for them, treating Benjamin with honor, but he still needed to know, had his brothers truly changed? So Joseph set one final test. He ordered his silver cup to be hidden in Benjamin's bag. After they left, Joseph sent guards to stop them. The cup was found, and Benjamin was accused of theft. Now came the real test. Would they abandon Benjamin as they once abandoned Joseph? But what happened next opened the door to redemption. Judah stepped forward, tears streaming down his face, and pleaded, "Do not take the boy. Take me instead. I pledged my life for him before our father." In that moment, seeing his brothers willing to sacrifice themselves for Benjamin, Joseph's heart broke wide open. He could no longer hide the truth. He ordered everyone out of the room. His voice shook. Tears fell uncontrollably. And then he cried out, "I am Joseph, your brother, the one you sold into Egypt." Silence filled the room. His brothers stood frozen, overwhelmed by guilt, fear, and shame. But Joseph raised his hand gently and said, "Do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves. It was not you, but God who sent me ahead of you to preserve life." In an instant, the room that once held fear was filled with healing, grace, and restoration. The past was no longer a prison. It had become the pathway to redemption. Joseph immediately sent for Jacob. When the old father arrived in Egypt and saw his son alive, he collapsed into Joseph's arms, weeping as though life itself had been returned to him. In the land of Goshen, the family was reunited. The dream that once seemed shattered had finally been fulfilled. The promise had not died. Purpose had prevailed, and Joseph did not celebrate revenge. He embraced forgiveness. Because true purpose is never about proving others wrong. It is about revealing who God has always been. In that moment, Joseph understood every tear, every betrayal, every dark night of wandering. Nothing had been wasted. Every step, even the painful ones, had been part of God's perfect plan. This is the great lesson Joseph's story teaches us. God's purpose is never just about one person. It is about how many lives he will touch through that one person. Joseph was elevated not only to save a nation, but also to save the very family who once rejected him. The boy who was thrown away became the man who brought reconciliation. The prisoner became the provider. The dreamer became a savior to many, and perhaps that is the revelation your heart needs right now. What you went through was not punishment, it was preparation. What hurt you also shaped you. What you lost became the very thing God used to guide you toward your calling. Sometimes God brings us into the palace, not to exalt us, but to show us the meaning behind every tear we cried on the way there. God never wastes pain. The pit taught Joseph to depend on God. The prison taught him to wait on God. And the palace revealed that every moment had been worth trusting God for. Joseph looked back and realized, if his brothers had not sold him, he never would have reached Egypt. If Potiphar's wife had not accused him, he never would have met the cupbearer. If the cupbearer had not forgotten him, he never would have been remembered by Pharaoh. Every injustice was a disguised bridge. Every delay was an invisible direction. This is how God works, writing straight even when our pages look torn. And now the young dreamer, once rejected and broken, stood before his family with a healed heart, a restored past, and the future God promised placed firmly in his hands. He embraced his brothers, wept over them, forgave them, fed them, and led them into a land of provision. When Jacob stood before Pharaoh and later embraced Joseph again, the old man wept into the arms of the son he thought was gone forever. God had kept his promise. The dream had not died, it had simply matured. God's purpose is never lost in time. It reveals itself when we are ready to live it. Joseph's life reminds us that purpose always passes through three stages: the pit, where we learn to trust; the prison, where we learn to wait; and the palace, where we learn to serve. Each stage is necessary. Each moment shapes us. Each wound becomes a testimony. If you find yourself in the pit, trust him. If you feel imprisoned in delay, remain faithful. Because the same God who walked with Joseph walks with you. You may not see it now, but he is building something eternal through your story. When the right time comes, he will lead you into the purpose that has always belonged to you. God's promise may feel slow, but it never fails. His purpose for your life is greater than anything you have lost. The pit was the beginning. The prison was the process. The palace was the purpose. And in the end, Joseph could say, "You intended evil against me, but God turned it for good, so that many lives would be saved." If this message spoke to your heart, I invite you to subscribe to Kingdom Stories. Like and share this video so others can discover God's purpose for their own journey.